Speaking of Happy presents Frankly Speaking. With co-host Eli Rigatuso, founder and queer transmasculine two-spirit of the Menominee Nation, and the lovely Avalisa Ellicott, model, public speaker, makeup fanatic, and outspoken transgender advocate. Together, we are Frankly Speaking.
We are Frankly Speaking.
Ooh, we are being so frank. Well,
A little more frank than usual.
You know what, though? Sometimes we ruffle feathers. And it wouldn't be Frankly Speaking if we didn't, because that's why we're here doing it. Gosh darn it.
Mm-hmm. to spill the tea.
To spill the tea. Yeah, this is just so many things I could say, but I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for the show. And I would like to bring on our guests at this point, who have been amazing. I mean, y'all just don't know what happens behind the scenes to put something like this together, plus dealing with my full-time job and all of the stuff that goes with that. And, you just roll with the punches and you learn how to pivot and you're like, well, I guess I'm not going to do that. But
sometimes what I am going to do, it doesn't.
Yeah. But what I am going to do is I'm going to introduce our guests. What's really cool about today's show is we brought back a couple of guests. We invited a couple of fine young ladies to join us, to come back and have a conversation, another frank conversation with us, right? Our first guest is a queer trans woman living in Austin, Texas. She's a small business owner and entertainer and enjoys writing about her transition journey. Ultimately, she strives to help create a more equitable and conscious world in any small way she can, whether that's by advocating for trans rights in the workplace, networking with other queer folk, sharing knowledge and resources with those in need, or raising awareness of the challenges our communities face. And I'm actually going to play a little something that everybody probably didn't think that I got to, but I actually did get to it. I'm going to play the little promo video that normally goes out prior to the show coming up that our guest, Robin Cochran, sent to us. So here we go. Ready?
Frankly speaking, I'm tired of insurance companies telling me which surgical procedures I can and cannot get. Trans surgeries aren't elective, they're reconstructive. It's not their job to tell me if my tits are nice enough already. That's mine. Frankly speaking.
And I wonder, Robin, how do you feel about your tits?
I'm actually pretty fond of my tits. Okay. For the most part, there's some work, and that's why I have a top surgery scheduled in just under a month, or just over a month.
Ooh.
Yeah, the very end of August. But I'm still waiting on insurance, so it's still maybe on the way.
Exactly. And we did have a show last week that was pretty much dedicated to surgeries and just what all it entails. And, our one of our guests has had complete bottom surgery on the male end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. And then we had someone who is coming up on having her surgeries. And again, I mean, people don't realize that all of the T's that we have to cross, all of the I's that we have to dot, all of the different things that we have to go through to somehow validate or make valid who we say we are. So with that, we will get to more. But I'm going to bring our second guest on while y'all ruminate on that fact. I'm going to bring on our second guest. She's a historian of Central Asia with a focus on Afghanistan. She has a master's degree from the George Washington University and a bachelor's from the University of Montana in Global Humanities and Religion. She's published articles and blogs on Afghan social and political history. She writes about transgender history and is a trans activist. She's an American Institute of Afghanistan Studies 2021 John F. Richards Fellow. She's currently a researcher at the United States Institute Institute of Peace, supporting the Religion and Inclusive Societies program, and does freelance writing. Whew. She helped establish the USIP LGBTQ plus peer group and has spearheaded a novel approach to GSM in peace building. Before working at USIP, she worked on issues in I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm going to have to ask her. I'm sure I've heard it, but I do not know how to pronounce this. So I'll have to bring her on. Our next guest is Julia Cheval. And Julia, welcome back to the show. Yay.
Oh, wait, we can't hear you.
Oh, we need some audio. Bring us some audio. Like, I think that it's amazing. Xin Shang, thank you.
Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Sorry about that.
Xin Shang, right? Xin Shang, is it?
Xinjiang.
Xinjiang. Okay.
Yeah, it's in the far west of
Thank
China. You might have heard about it in the news lately with like Uyghurs. That's it. It's pretty much just a Turkic Muslim region within China. Yeah, and I worked for an NGO that did some work on Uyghur issues.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have like your bio is just astonishing to me. So first of all, like, thank you, because you're a busy person, obviously. Not that Robin's not busy. I'm sure Robin's busy as well.
Absolutely.
And I'm busy. Melissa's busy, but I just appreciate that you agreed to come back and be on the show with us and have another frank conversation about life and what things are, how things are going for you. So thanks again.
Thanks for letting me come back on.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't difficult when Avalisa said, "Hey, I have 2 previous guests that want to come back. How do you feel about that?" I'm like, "Great." Bring them back. Bring them back. So, what kind of burning things would you like to talk about today, folks?
I'll start. Fuck
Yes.
dysphoria. Fuck dysphoria. I have so many amazing things going on in my life right now, and that should be enough to keep me in the right mental headspace. I started like making candles and shit so that I actually have a hobby that's not work related. I'm working on merch and shit like that. Like, I'm in a good place. I'm happy in my marriage and getting ready to move, and like it should be really, really good. And then I think it's been like all week, I've just been having this ridiculous bout of dysphoria. And it's like a mix of, I don't want to be in public. I don't want to get out of bed. There's so much that I have to do to like feel good about myself today, when like I have all of these amazing things. So absolutely fuck that.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, one of the things about dysphoria, like for me, is it always, you don't know when it's going to strike. Right.
That's the shit part. If I could like plan out my dysphoria for 3 days a month, like I could be like, hey, not going to do shit for these 3 days. I'd lay in bed. I'd look like shit. I wouldn't shower. And then I'd get back into life. But that bitch just hits at like random times for no fucking reason at all.
Yeah. 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 You know, and I think the other thing that sometimes will like blindside me is when I'm having a conversation with someone who I believe is supportive and who sees me and who validates me, like, right. And then all of a sudden they ask a question, or they say something that, or they say it in a way where I'm just like, really? Like, you realize that you're asking me to defend my humanity and my identity, like who I am to my core, by asking that question in that way. You know, like an example is someone saying, well, you know, do you really think that everybody feels that way? Like, aren't you denying certain people of certain things when you say blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, what? I'm not denying anybody of anything. As a matter of fact, I am being more open and inclusive to all people. You know, so Avalisa, what do you do when that comes up? Do you have any things like structures in place to help you kind of come out of that? Or
like normally if I can find the energy to like put on makeup and do my hair, that's enough to like where I can look in the mirror and be like, you're good, you're fine, everything is cool. But like outside of that, like not really. I have a husband who tells me I'm beautiful all the time at every point of my being, which should be like super comforting and super amazing. But at the same time, like dysphoria is in the back of my ear being like, he's just saying that because he's your husband. And it's like, oh, fuck off.
little dysphoria.
I hate it too. Like, it's not rooted in logic. It's not rooted in anything that we have any control over at this point. I feel like dysphoria, once we reach a certain point in our transition, it just becomes this giant well, basically, of all the microaggressions that were thrown at between the last time we had to like take a dip in it, basically. And we're climbing our way up. Maybe someone kicks us down, or maybe we just lose our grip, but we're always working our way out of it seems like.
I have those times where, I absolutely live for myself. And it's like, I'm the baddest bitch to ever exist. I am a 10 in every city in America.
You are, though.
But then
I like that every city qualifier. I think, this is frankly speaking, and that's the tea. I mean, like, come on.
It really is.
And
like
the siren. Thank you for the siren. Yes.
Who has the sound effects on?
An Austin 10 and a Dallas 10 are two different things. An Omaha 10 and an LA 10 are two completely different things. And on those days, I feel like I am a 10 at every location, every city. And that feels amazing. But at the same time, it's like, who knows what's going to throw me off this high?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's like if you ever watched those things where somebody's walking down the street, then somebody comes from out of nowhere and just plows them completely over. They're just gone, just flattens you. Like that's how I feel. And then I also am like, there are times when I'll hear this voice inside my head and I'll be like, who exactly am I? Right? Mm-hmm. Like I'll look at myself in certain, like wearing certain clothes or certain things. And then all of a sudden I will have this weird, bizarro conversation with myself. And it's really difficult to try to have that, to say it out loud to someone who isn't transgender or non-binary.
Yeah. It's hard because you know that they can sympathize, but they can't understand. Like every time I buy clothes from Shein that have any type of like prefabricated waist on them, I'll put it on. It's a beautiful dress, but the waist is too high. And I'm like, this is not the smallest part of my waist. And it's because I'm a man, and it's because I have man bones and man fat and man, and then it's just like, whoop.
Yeah.
Same thing happened to me when I bought that strawberry dress online. I bought a knockoff strawberry dress. The waist sits about right under my tits. I'm like, oh, this is absolutely not the cut. This is like one of my grandma's old dresses. This is a style choice. So let's see how
this is a statement that I'm making.
Yeah.
So
that's the end result. It's going to be cute. Just
when that happens, does the like length of the skirt is that also impacted?
I mean, the length of this skirt goes down to like my ankles. I think it was supposed to be like floor length. But then again, like Avalisa was saying, our proportions are different. It's something that like we have to factor into online purchases, especially ones that are from overseas.
Yeah. You know, I will say this. My partner, they've shared with me some of the issues that they have with their body structure as well. And, you know, born assigned female is non-binary, so doesn't really assign to either. But they're taller, and they have like, you know, they might find something that fits great in the waist, but the length is way off. Like for what some people might have been long pants, they're now capris.
You know,
right?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Just get into it.
I think that, like, honestly, one of the weird things that's about like clothing in the United States is like in most countries, tailoring and getting things tailored is routine and normal. And there's not the expectation, because it's clearly an unreasonable expectation that you can just walk into a store, grab something off the shelf, and it will fit you perfectly. But in the US, there is kind of that expectation. Like, I have a lot of friends who are like from Shanghai or China, or from like Afghanistan, or just countries that are, you know, all over the world. And getting things tailored is pretty affordable and pretty cheap. And it's way more feasible to do than it is here. And so, like, I think this is just an interesting point where, like, everybody's got to deal with this weird thing where nothing really fits exactly right. And we don't really have the capacity to really tailor things better, cheaply, because of our weird political economic history. And I think it, you know, of course, it like accentuates like dysphoria for everybody. It's like a weird unintended consequence. And so like the way I've dealt with it is like I've like learned to sew. And if I buy anything and I don't perfectly enjoy the fit, like I'll just work on it until I'm happy with it. And that's kind of, I guess, my structure that I use to cope on those really bad days. Sometimes, you know, the best thing you can do is just go home and sleep all day and not think about anything. But I really like just channeling that into like fixing things until I'm happy with them. Whether that's adding like a little fabric on like a waistline or hemming a skirt in a slightly different way. And I think that's like, I think it's a good skill to have. And I think that, you know, more tailoring would be good for us as trans people.
I have been looking at Joanne's website for like a reasonable sewing machine, but like I don't know. I know that I can sew. I know how to cut a pattern, and I know how to, you know, make it fit and things like that. I just don't know like which sewing machine to get, like to start with. And if I spend like $200 on a sewing machine and like the needle is breaking all of the time because the machine is, I don't know, it's a weird thing, but it's something that I do want to get into, because I think being able to make something that perfectly fits my body is going to be such gender euphoria that it's something that I need to have in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also for the drags, because I'm tired of paying that money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely for drag.
Yeah.
You need it to,
Agreed.
you want it snatched. Like as snatched.
And I'm not buying anybody else's costumes.
Right.
Robin, do you have a topic that you would like to talk about so we can get off of the depressing topic of dysphoria?
Well, hey, but I will say this much for
that's like not depressing, because like the big thing down here in Texas right now is that they revived what was it, SB 29, the sports bill, but that's something we can get into later. That's what all my friends are up to lately. Here's something. I've been experiencing euphoria about my body. I've been swimming more.
Ooh.
Like pretty much for the first time since starting my transition 5 years ago, I've started going out to, I went out to Deep Eddy about a month or so ago. last week or the week before last, I went to Barton Springs for Keep Queer Swim. Gonna do it next week as well. And each time I'm just wearing like my trans color bikini. I'm not tucking because can't even do that anymore. Like can't even do that without tape basically. But who cares? I'm swimming and no one's bothering me about it. So that's been real nice.
I definitely envy the girls who can exist without tucking, but I need everything to be I need it to be snatched back so hard that I am in physical pain if I am going to the beach. And there are a lot of products that will hold it through the water. And so I don't know. I mean, I'll still be ready to jump in the pool because I will take some of that tit tape and strap my shit back and hop in somebody's pool.
I just so the way I do it is like, I just have like an extra thong on beneath my swimsuit, and I don't wear a top because I don't want to. And it makes swimming way more fun, and I feel like a beautiful maiden. So that's nice. Yeah, I also have been swimming recently. I've gone swimming a lot this summer, more than any summer before. And yeah, I like feel the same like Evelisa. Like I have to tuck. If I don't, I feel exposed. And like
I just feel like everybody's like, look at her dick. Like
right? And like that's the last thing I want to happen at a beach.
And I'm sure it wouldn't happen because, you know, there are a few people in this world that have the gall to actually do something like that. But there are people that do it. And that's why it's unsafe for us to live. But I doubt that like it would be a big deal. But like I will stare at my tuck in the mirror before like I go out swimming. And I'll be like,
Yeah, I'll ask my friends. I'll be like, hey, how does this look? On a scale of like 0 to 10, how much of a coochie do I have right now? Like, come on.
Is
like,
this fat coochie or is this penis? Do I need to put another tape on?
Yeah.
I jumped out of the pool too fast, and I legit like I turned to my friend who was near me like, please tell me, because I'm afraid to look down and draw attention to it. Is there bubble gum? I need to know. Is there bubble gum on this sidewalk?
What a perfect way to describe the situation that could face us. That's so funny. Oh my God.
I remember one time I was performing in Austin on stage, and I felt it about halfway through the number, but like just full bubble gum out the side. And I was just like, okay, well, there go all of the dance moves that I was going to do. And then went back downstairs and then like got more tape. And this is back in the day where like vinyl tape was the thing to do. But that shit, a little bit of sweat and it's off.
I can't imagine it. Like I wore full, basically like full shapewear, everything. And everything was covered too. Like even my tights were like totally opaque. I had 5 pairs of opaque tights. Absolutely everything I could do to make sure that I could tuck without having to worry about taping it.
Robin's seen me perform live, especially back in the Austin days. I was naked 24/7. I did a performance where the only thing I was wearing was tape and glitter. That's it.
And if you come on Tuck during that, honestly, anyone said something, I'd be like, don't be ungrateful. Something happened in the world. You've earned this.
This is a gift for you.
The first time I was performing, I was in a drag competition with Pheromone, actually. We started drag together. But one of the weeks was 90s. Yeah, it was 90s, and I did RuPaul Supermodel. So I had the big RuPaul wig, and I had this full gown, and it was just like, it was tight on my tits, and they were probably like a year old, maybe a year old. And I get out on stage, and like as soon as I walked off, it went whoop, just nipples out. And like I tried to pull it up, but they kept popping out. And at some point I was like, this is your gift. This is the gift that you are receiving for coming to this show. Enjoy these nipples.
If I had
see the nipple, honor the
my
nipple.
top has fallen down during a number at Rain, specifically at Rain on 4th, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened more than once. No, that's just more of a reference, but yeah, it's happened like twice, maybe 3 times, and it's all every time sweetheart neckline. I love them. They're gonna be the death of me.
Free the nipple.
Free the nipple though.
Yeah, I
It
support
happened.
that.
Tired
Someone's on the
of,
floor.
like-
The nipples were freed.
Why are we
Someone picked them up and
like
walked out.
so
Free nipples.
obsessed with like body parts and like privatizing them? Like I understand like the parts that you use the bathroom with. Yeah, okay, let's cover those up in public. But if you can see my nipples through my shirt, that shouldn't be a problem because I still have on a shirt.
Mhm.
And if I decide not to wear a shirt in a situation like at the beach or at a pool or like somewhere where it is allowed for men to be there shirtless, why?
And it's
Why
just
is it a big
so
thing?
it's so fun and it feels nice and it's good.
Mhm.
And like literally like I just think it's so strange that we would consider that, you know, inappropriate. I saw this thing the other day. It was like women's dresses from Crete and like Minoa and Greece, you know, in ye old ancient times. And the dress was cut. So it was like a long gown, but it had like a square right here. So your tits would just be out all day,
Mhm.
like all the time. And in like the Middle Ages, medieval women also had like cleavage, but theirs was like cut like this specifically to like display the nipple. And so I just think like it's so weird that in this moment it's considered taboo. But I've recently just like stopped wearing a top when I go swimming, you know? Like it's a little weird, but I honestly think like I think it's more fun, and I think it's so silly that anyone would say no. And if they say no, it's like, okay, so you're gonna tell me to like cover up my killer rack on the beach, bitch? Like, what the fuck? I wouldn't do it unless like they got a cop to tell me. I wouldn't do it. Like, I don't care. And even if a cop told me, I think I don't even know if they would. It's just
Look
such a
at these
weird-
wondrous tits.
Look at
You
these.
show them off. you go and you show off those titties.
Yeah. Why not?
I paid good
I
money.
mean,
for
why
these.
not?
I actually didn't pay good money for these. I'm all
I
natural.
pay good money for these. This is
So
this
far, I'm
is
all
$6,000-$7,000, and if they are out, then they are out. God damn it, I paid for it.
It's precious cargo. It's on display. It's like goods. It's honestly like public art at that point. You know, it's a crime to not display it and to be proud of that.
Well, exactly. You know what I find really interesting in, you know, on the other aspect, on the other end of the aspect, right? Like for myself and getting top surgery, it's weird. In my own house, if I'm home alone, that's fine. I'll walk around with my shirt off. Not a big deal. But if my roommate's home, I won't. And these are kind of some of the things that I think about that kind of, for me, start to trigger some sort of dysphoria of, why should I care? Like, my chest is just my chest and it's a male chest. And so why should I put a shirt on or cover myself up or feel some sort of shame or embarrassment because I've got my shirt off? And it's hard to shake that. I mean, that's 50 years of socialization of saying that I have to hide these. And that part of my body isn't something that's supposed to be visible or shown. I mean, I'll tell you this. I have a sister who's a year and a half younger than me, bless her heart. From a very small age. Like my mom used to say that she would, at every morning she'd go in to pull Gail out of bed and she would be completely buck naked. And she would walk around the house naked. Like she would just take her clothes off. Like And all the way up until she got even older, like as a teenager, she'd go into the shower and take a shower and come out with her towel wrapped around her waist and be like, hey, what's the big deal, right? I don't have that same kind of like, let it all hang out kind of thing. I don't know if I ever will. And so it's like, there's these different ways of looking at it. I mean, like, I still believe free the nipple. Like, I think that we need to stop sexualizing female breasts. They're just breasts. And there are some men with bigger boobs than some of my female friends. And they walk around like no big deal.
I was somewhere. I won't go into specifics, but I was somewhere and a woman was asked to put her top on. And there was a man who had an ample chest. I would say borderline bosom. And she screamed very loudly, loud enough for all of us to hear, if he doesn't have to put a top on, neither do I, because his tits are bigger than mine. And I was like,
we need a sound effect for that, Julia.
Yeah, there's the penis to coochie scale. We've got the chest to bosom scale. We're making a lot of like innovations today. Great job. Great job, people.
And I mean, you should know because you've got all of the researcher and all of the fancy.
No, I don't do statistics. Literally. Okay. So what I do is like in 756 AD, an Islamic scholar wrote an opinion about tax law in regard to converted like Jewish to like Muslim lands. What's the implication of that for modern Islamic constitutional law? Like, I don't do statistics mostly. I do a little bit of that stuff, but I mostly do like other questions with like history that are just so arcane and meaningless that it's like, there's pretty much only two places in the world I can work, and one of them is Washington, D.C., and the other is like a university. So yeah, I just do qualitative research. But that's in regard to Afghanistan and Islam. But then, and that's all relevant to the Peace Institute. And then the other research is just on like transgender people, essentially. Like the other week, I had a really good meeting with a couple of our sisters in Pakistan with the organization, the Forum for Dignity Initiative, which is an organization that is essentially seeking to build cis and trans unity among women's groups in order to more effectively lobby the Pakistani government for quotas and representation. And the really interesting part about this is that like trans women in Pakistan actually have a better social position than religious minority women like Hazara women. And so if they come together, it isn't what we might expect in the US, which is a cis women's group choosing to work with a trans women's group and the trans women group like getting more access to resources. In Pakistan, it's different, where the religious minority women have an incentive to work with trans women because they have more status and acceptance and resources. And so that's kind of an example of some of the work I do. I've been in talks with them and discussions with them lately about a couple different projects. And it's really cool to get to talk to, our sisters on the other side of the world, because even if different cultures, different universes, there's a real sense of solidarity there. And that kind of thing, like whenever you talk to another trans person, you can, not always, but sometimes you can just feel like kind of like a yes, you get it, like a connection of some kind, like a sisterly connection, I would say, in the case of like a trans woman. I feel that talking to my sisters at FDI, even though we've never spoken to before, we're separated by language, culture, history. It's really pretty and really beautiful. And so that's the transgender research I do at USAP.
I am so looking forward to being a guest speaker in one of Professor Cheval's classes. I already have the outfit picked out.
The important part.
If I ever get a PhD, I'll definitely invite you. It'd be good. It'd be good. But I don't know. But that's kind of the research I do. That's my job right now. It's a really cool job. I made my job. Yeah.
Sorry, I downloaded a sound effects thing and it's not working. Of course.
The one sound effect that I need in my everyday life is the like. I feel like that would keep me like. I feel like that would take me out of dysphoria. Just like a rip. Like I'd be like, okay, get it together. You got this. Get up and do something.
I think I just need the Curb Your Enthusiasm thing where it's like do 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 do. I can't even do it, but like I just have so many weird problems in my life that just don't make sense or just like so funny. Like the other day, I texted one of my friends who is Palestinian, and I was like, "Hey, are you back in DC?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm back here for one more day. I got back 2 months ago. I've been really busy." So I was like, "Oh, so we can't hang out." It's just like this really funny moment where like we finally got a chance to sit down and talk, but he's like leaving the next day. And it's just like Curb Your Enthusiasm music like begins to play like immediately. I need that sound effect. It wouldn't make my life better. It wouldn't help with dysphoria. I think it would just make things a little bit more thematic, I guess.
I think a soundtrack might like increase my what is the word? I hate when this happens to me. My quality of life. I think a soundtrack would just, for everything that I'm doing. Like when I'm sitting and I'm on the computer researching, like having like research music playing. Maybe that's something I need to look into. Like I have AirPods. I can make a soundtrack for my life.
My research
just
music
background
like,
music.
You're just describing ADHD. That's just what living with ADHD is like. You have a constant soundtrack that you can't turn off.
My ADHD soundtrack is me thinking about all of the other things that I need to do, that I could be doing, the things that I forgot to do. And it's like, oh, let me go do that. Oh, what was I doing? Oh, it's okay. I'm gonna do something else because there's something else that I forgot. But with Adderall, that calms down quite a bit.
Nice.
I'm here in my makeup.
Sorry, I'm just trying to. I'm trying to get you some sound effects here, but they're not working. They're not working. This is making me mad because I just paid for this app too. All right, I will find more. Okay, well, I'm going to scroll back up because there were a couple of things that came across for Avalisa here. So Avalisa, you don't need an expensive sewing machine. All you need is a straight and zigzag stitch. If it's over $70, you're good.
Okay, thank you, Ebony.
Also, great resources for sewing are the LGBTQ plus and Ally Sewist Facebook group and Love to Sew podcast. Right? And we have a question from B. How do you all feel on the comparative nature of spending time with trans friends of the same identifying gender versus cis friends of that gender, as in the unique experiences of similarities and acceptance of both groups, but also differences, but you're connected by your transness? Who wants to take that on?
I'm always down to answer things. So, like, there's this thing, being Black in the Black community, where you walk into a room and you understand how many other Black people are in that room. And having a conversation with that other Black person, there's this unspoken, you get it. Even if they don't get it, there's the understanding of you get it. And so within the trans community, when I'm hanging out with someone else who is just somewhere under the umbrella, it's like, you get it. I feel more comfortable with you because you get it. And I don't have to go through the long explanation of why things are the way that they are. Hanging out with a trans woman specifically, then there's a little bit more understanding. Hang out with a Black trans woman, it's like, bitch, we the same. We understand. And so it's not that I necessarily prefer the company of other trans people. It's just a sense of calm that comes when you are around someone else who's trans, whether you get along or not. It's still like, you get it.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I think it's also there's certain amounts of information that don't have to be shared, right? You know, when you're hanging out, like, I'll be honest, when I'm hanging out with cis guys, not always a place that I enjoy being. I can appreciate if I'm hanging out with a cis gay guy of color. That's a completely different experience, right? And so cis straight women is also kind of there's a discomfort or a certain level of comfort that doesn't exist there. In particularly if they're someone who's highly privileged, right? So there's this like certain amount of information that's already understood when you're with someone else who is a trans person. If they're a trans person who identifies similarly to you, it's even there's even more understanding. Like you said, Avalisa. What do we have here?
Hey, Lori.
Oh. Some more info for sewing machines. $100 at Walmart, and it has served her well. Grew up on my mom's fancy machine that she used professionally and worried this wouldn't be good enough, but it's great and easy to use. There you go, with a link of all things. With a link of all things. So, yeah. So what do you think, Julia or Robin? Anything to add on that as far as like hanging out with folks who are?
I have something to add. Sorry. I guess what I would just say is like, so working for the government, most of the people I encounter in my daily life at work I like to think of them as like pretty perfect cis people. Like Washington, D.C., the part that I work in is just so professional and really upper class, and, you know, mostly like for white people who live in Virginia.
No!
I'm waiting. I know where it stopped.
Well, I'm thinking PPCP, pretty perfect cis people.
Okay, sorry, I'm back.
White people who live in Virginia.
White people live in Virginia. So my point here is that, like, you know, like, it's just, you go to these places and you're around these people and you just feel the divide in your lives between them and you. Like, there's just this like thing where like, you know, my coworkers might be talking about like, oh, like my fiance or like my friend, or like I had a really bad day the other day because my mom was sad, and it's like, I had a really bad day and my friend got beaten in the street. Like, I had a really bad day. It's like totally different worlds and senses of good and bad and like things, you know, like to me, like even like I just feel such a big divide, because what I consider bad and dangerous and things to watch out for, you know, it's a totally different, you know, set of things than the people that I might talk to a lot. And so for me, like, you know, with other trans people, like, and not all, but a lot, you know, there's like an understanding of, I guess, the risk, I think. And that's what I really think is helpful for me, at least, is like, you know, we may not have the same understanding of our identity or desires, but you can understand how scary it can be and the problems we have. And that's really what like I find beneficial and, you know, therapeutic and healing about being with other trans people. That said, you know, like I have a lot of cisgender straight friends who are all cis straight women who are all the pretty perfect cis people that I mentioned. And, you know, to a lot of people, I probably look like that too, you know? And so there's that added element of like, and so, you know, there's that added element of like, this is a thing I dislike, but I also kind of might look like this to most people at work. So I don't know what to say. But, I just think it's,
you know, but this is the thing, Julia, you're so spot on, because the other thing that I think about is that I think for us as trans folks, not all, but most of us, we understand these levels of privilege. And the reason why I say not all is because I have met many trans folks, and it is typically trans folks who are white who don't understand that. They don't understand if they have passing privilege. I'll meet trans folks of color, most especially Black trans women, who know when they have cis passing privilege, but who also understand that that still doesn't move them up high on the level of privilege when we're looking at like the privilege pyramid, for example. But that's a really important point, and I'm going to keep PPCP on hand for future.
No, I mean, it just kind of, I think it just captures like the intimidation, you know, like, and I mean intimidation. Like, you can walk into a place and be like, this place is hostile to me. Even if it's not directly hostile, it's apathetic to me. It is not interested in me. It's not a place where I belong.
And see, when you are with a group of other trans people, you can walk into that space, get that feeling, and be like, "We need to go." And then the other trans people are like, "Yep, let's go." Whereas when you're with cis people, they're like, "Oh no, nobody's going to say anything. It's going to be fine." And it's not like they're actively trying to gaslight you, but the danger is different because they don't have the same history of experiences. And so that's why a lot of the times when I would go out, I'd always go to a gay club, because fuck, like, getting clocked in a straight club and like having somebody try to kill me. Fuck that shit.
Yeah, I pretty much only go to gay bars at this point. I pretty much only do. I like them. I think they're fine. And like, I actually live across the street from one. That's pretty cool. I know the owner. He's like this really old, like, campy gay guy. God bless him.
Yeah. I like that though.
Y'all went over that topic like real thorough. I don't think I have anything to add to that. Only thing I've been able to come up with is just, I mean, my own personal experience is very similar and mirrors y'all's. It boils down to intersectionality. Like, how many intersectional identities do you have in common with this person? The transness being like the core one in this situation. But even like with the cis person, full disclosure, I'm white passing as shit. Like, y'all can tell, very white passing. My mother's maiden name is Salinas. I don't know what the exact percentage is, because I'm not going to do a 23andMe. I'm not going to figure out what my whole situation is there. But yeah, that side of my family is Hispanic. And meeting people with that particular intersection of, white passing Hispanic people that are also trans women, that's only happened to me like 3 times, and it's been a treat every time because we have more to talk about. I don't know, I kind of lost track of it about halfway through what I was saying.
We recently had a masculine trans man on the show that is white passing Hispanic.
Yeah.
I have a thing that I guess I would like to add too. Sorry to belabor the point, maybe.
Do it.
No, do it.
So one of the things that I mentioned this organization earlier, the Forum for Dignity Initiative in Pakistan. They have a Facebook. I'd really recommend looking into it. But one of the things that I really appreciated about them is they are not, the Forum for Inclusion Initiative. It's the Forum for Dignity. And there's an emphasis on dignity. And to me, I think I have 2 thoughts based on that, which is people who have never had like their dignity taken away from them, like taken and stripped and made a mockery of, it's like the amount of rage I feel for that, undignified treatment. And when I say dignity, I don't mean just like respect, though. That's part of it. I mean like what we're entitled to as people and human beings that's taken away from us. I just feel like sometimes talking with people who have never been on the other side of power, it's very difficult to to relate or talk to them. And I think that a lot of times, like, my distance from like cis people is just a product of like not even really being trans. It's like there's people all over the world in many countries, in many different contexts, who have their dignity taken away from them. And in this country, like, we are trans people, and so our dignity is taken a lot from us. And so we don't really relate to cis people. But in many other country contexts and around the world, you know, there are other people who are nothing like us, who have that kind of dignity stripped and face abuse. And so, you know, I think part of it is cis and trans, but I also think that I think there's also, to an extent, where it's just like we have gone through a bad time and other people don't. And that's just really hard for anyone in any context to talk about or relate to. And I think the second point that I would want to say is, like, I think we kind of just lack a language to build that kind of like friendship with a lot of cis people. One of the things that a woman, her name is Uzma Yakub, told me about the Forum for Dignity initiative is they held this training in Islamabad, which is the capital of Pakistan. And it was with a bunch of cis women, feminists, and trans women activists. And they got a hotel and they roomed the trans women and the cis women together. And a lot of the cis women said, you can't do this. We are going to complain. We're going to leave. This is bad. And the director of FDI, Uzma Yakub, said, you know what? We're not going to let you leave the hotel now. Don't leave the hotel. Just do one night. Like, just do one night. I promise you it will be safe. Just do one night. And so they did it. And the next day, I mean, like, the cis women, not all of them, of course, but some of them who had been angry kind of like had to spend a night with a trans person and realized that it was safe, and spending a night with just like any other woman in like a hotel room, you know, just like at a conference together. And that broke down the initial barriers of like, this is like a man, or this is someone who might be predatory. This is someone I cannot trust. And the breaking down of that barrier was founded upon what Uzma called just, why don't you enjoy, like, how she framed it was saying, why don't you just go and enjoy their womanhood? Like, why don't you just like try to like understand them as a woman and try to enjoy that? And I think that kind of view, that kind of language that can bring people together on like this shared identity as like women is something that we might not really talk about a lot. And I think for me, like, that is one of the key ways to, you know, bridge that gap, is by emphasizing that identities, like by saying, no, we are women too, you know? And like, you can enjoy that because it's cool and it's fun and it's nice, you know? And so I guess I would just, I just think that, you know, a huge part of this is just, it's hard for people who haven't lost dignity to talk to people who have. And it's really hard for us as trans people to, I think, make progress if we don't emphasize things like enjoying womanhood together, or like just having more simple pleasures, you know? Yeah. It's not all theory. I don't know.
There's something that you said. Oh, there's something that you said that I wanted to loop to real quick. You were talking about power being taken away and dignity being taken away. And I think one thing that is particularly enraging is when people try to equate their power being taken away with your power being taken away. Especially when it's like the smallest shit. And it's like, no, you don't fucking get it. You don't fucking get it. Well, that's me saying it in the nicest way possible, which is still frank, but not like.
But you know what? I think this is interesting. So B asked this question on the topic of being BIPOC. Have you found that being from the background you have had a preview of the struggles of being trans because you've experienced being marginalized early on, and how you feel it has affected you now in both connecting but disconnecting from ethnic group and the trans community in general? And I think that what you just said, Julia, and what you highlighted, Avalisa, has a little bit to do with that, because for myself as a person of color, the discrimination that I felt first, the sting that happened first, was being in a Catholic grade school, one of the two darkest kids in my class, and experiencing these little white kids that did not have that cultural awareness, who made fun of me, who did the like that kind of stuff. They talked about wanting to scalp me. I mean, like things that they said that were just, to me, I'm like going, what in the world? Like, who teaches you these things? And this is
Your parents.
grade school. This is grade school, mind you, right? And so experiencing that at a very young age and feeling othered and alienated because I was Native American. And it's not anything that I was ever taught to not be proud of. Like, it's not like my parents said, don't do that, don't say that, don't, like, right? Like, I was told that I was Native American. I was told that my mom was born on a reservation in Kashina, Wisconsin. We visited the reservation in Kashina, Wisconsin. And so my experience, and that even is a whole different experience, because I have relatives who didn't leave the reservation. So aunts and uncles who stayed on the reservation and had kids on the reservation. It wasn't until the next like 1 or 2 generations down that there started to be some understanding of the similarities of our experience as Native people. Although I grew up as an urban Indian and they grew up on the reservation. But there were initially, when I was younger, we were literally taught that there was a distinction between who we were as Native people because they didn't leave the reservation. And my mom, and although my mom didn't choose to leave, my mom and her siblings who left with their parents were part of the Indian Relocation Act of 1957. So they didn't have a choice. My mom was 12, 13 years old. She was young when she left. But she left because her parents left. And it wasn't like, oh, hey, I'm staying here, thanks, right? That wasn't going to happen. But yes, I think that the point that Be Kind Rewind was making, as a person of color, there are experiences we have that are different than folks who are born white and into white families. And I get where you're coming from, Robin, in regard to the white passing piece of it, but didn't actually start to experience that until I started to even more strongly embrace my indigenous side and started to talk about being Two-Spirit and started to talk about my experiences in the world. And people would be like, well, how much Indian blood do you have? And I'm like, do you realize how gross that question is? Like, I have enough, like the one drop rule says I couldn't have been born or lived off the reservation at one point in America, right? I would have been forced to have lived. And that point was not very far back from when I was born, because I was born in 1965. So I think that we do have to kind of look at, again, I think we're talking about this kind of globally, but also like intersectionality and how those things impact us as people of color, as people who are born assigned a certain gender, and the differences. Like, I'm in a few trans masculine groups online, and they're F to M. So these are guys who are like, look, I'm a man. I've always been a man. That's all it is. I got to get my truck. I'm going to get my Jeep. I'm going to do my thing. And like, I can't relate to any of that, because to me, it's like, what kind of masculinity are you actually trying to aspire to be like? Like, none of that kind of masculinity has ever been anything I've ever wanted, ever. I would never aspire to it. And change my mind. Right? It's that stance.
Toxic masculinity in trans men is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's mostly, again, I will say, I see it a lot more with trans men who are white than I do with trans men of color.
It's a lot of emulating what you grew up with and what your ideas of manhood are. The same with women, because there is toxic femininity. And I think that it's the women that you have had around you and who you want to be versus who you think you should be. And I think that's a very interesting topic that we should discuss in the after show.
Hey, yes, because we have reached the end of our hour. For those of you who are watching, thank you so much. I'm actually, I was once again terrible about If you would like to tip Robin, please send Robin a little cash over at Robin-Cochran, Cochran, on Venmo. All tips accepted. Again, at the show, frankly speaking, we do pay a stipend to our guests, so they are getting something. But tips are always, always, always welcome. And then, of course, I'm going to throw that back up for a second. Because
if you want to
everybody
know
has
some cis people, this is the cis people Venmo.
No, I say you need to tip Julia for PPCP, Pretty Perfect Cis People, and you can tip Julia at Julia_BBY, baby, Julia, baby.
Julia,
baby. Julia, baby. All right. Well, you know what I did, and this is just for y'all who are here. You are going to be invited. I'm going to send you a link in our private chat over to our after show. So we are going to end this live stream. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for your robust questions, your wonderful questions. We appreciate it so much. We will be back in 2 weeks with the next episode, which is going to be episode 8 of Frankly Speaking. Again, Julia, Robin, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you in the after show.